Hey there everybody, it's markcrilley. I'm back with another video. This is part 2 in my ongoing series of no time-lapse videos. Last week I did this pencil drawing. This week I'm adding watercolor, and I'm not going to waste any time. I'm just going to jump in and start doing it right now. This video is going to be all about adding color, as you might expect with watercolor. Wow, Crilly, what a revelation. He's using watercolor to add color by way of water. Anyway, what I'm doing here is putting down a base layer of a kind of ochre brown, and this is sort of a technique that I use sometimes, which is to say adding one base layer of color all the way through the entire illustration, and then figuring that later on you can alter colors and add more interesting types of color on top of this, sometimes partially dissolving it in the process, but in a way it unifies the entire illustration. So you may be looking at me right now and saying, "What? You're ignoring all the lines and adding color all the way across? Didn't they in kindergarten they teach you to stay within the lines, Crilly? What are you doing?" But this is all on purpose. I'm putting down this base layer that will allow a sort of a unified color to be there beneath everything, and then I can fine-tune and add different colors as we go along. Now, as I said last week, I'm trying to make each one of these videos about 15 minutes long, and this one hopefully will be pretty close to that, but it will involve me hitting the pause button and letting the paint dry sometimes. I don't consider that a cheat. It's not time-lapse. But those of you who've used watercolor before, you know that sometimes it is not a good idea to go straight in while the watercolor is still wet, and having the patience, allowing something to dry before continuing work can be crucial. I find it actually nice to do this initial base layer approach, because in a way you can almost just switch off your brain and say, well, for now everything is this one color. And I'm not even thinking too much about darkness and lightness at this stage. I'm just, you have the freedom of just putting a whole bunch of stuff down so that you're no longer dealing with the whiteness of the page. But there's the pressure is off, basically, because you're like, this is not the final color. Later on I may change. Now the key is to keep it light, because if you're going in with a bunch of dark color, then you're going to have a lot of problem changing the color later on. I'm going in here to the area of her hand with a piece of Kleenex, because I don't want that to have so much color to it. But there you go, there's your base layer, and I think what I might do, even while it's still a little bit wet, is to start darkening up the lower section of the vehicle. Let's see how this works for me. Maybe some of it has already dried, even while I was talking. I was blabbing for so long that the paint just dried, and I don't need to hit the pause button. Yeah, maybe that'll work out. In any case, those of you who have watercolors and maybe have been a little fearful about attempting to use them, this video can be a good way of sort of showing you the entire process, especially this way of beginning with the base layer. And like I said, it's just like you almost can't go wrong in a way. Everything that you're adding is just of a single color. And indeed, there are illustration styles that involve just a single color like this for the entire illustration. Some people are masters of it, and it looks great. Some people, not me. But yeah, I guess we're finding out that I won't need to hit the pause button. I don't see any areas bleeding into the other areas so far. But you can see the watercolor lends itself, at least the way I use it, lends itself to a certain grittiness as the color dries, you see little imperfections that I think are actually quite beautiful. Whereas, you know, a lot of times markers have a smoothness, or at least a different look. Now, please don't think that I'm criticizing markers. I've used markers before, and I think I've seen beautiful work done with them. I'm just sort of pointing out the difference between watercolor and marker. They do create different effects. In any case, yeah, I'm just going in now and adding a bit of shading throughout, and I suppose I should start thinking about what will my second color be. I was imagining a bit of redness. I suppose it's based on that land speeder from the first Star Wars movie. Always liked the look of that one. And that wasn't it sort of like a reddish, brownish color? And now I'm going to go in with hopefully a considerably darker area of brown for the kind of underbelly down here. I think this should be the darkest part of the illustration. And I'm looking forward to next week when I can do the final line work, the details and so forth. You can do a certain amount of detail with watercolor. Some people can do an amazing amount of detail with watercolor. Not me. But I was talking last week about how, you know, normally I probably would have tried to get more details in place in pencil, but my goal of trying to keep these videos to around 15 minutes or so caused me to stop a little early. But the more I think about it, it's probably a good thing. It shows a different technique here of getting the color in real early in the process before you've even finalized the pencil work. There's just so many different ways of working, and if someone, you know, if some teacher on YouTube or in your everyday life tells you this is the way to do it, all artists do it this way, and artists who don't do it this way are doing it wrong. I believe that just can't be correct. Every artist comes up with their own way of doing things. There are benefits and drawbacks to different ways of working, and of course, you know, there are the traditional methods, the tried and true methods of working. But I'm a big believer in the sort of freedom of art, and not, you know, slamming down these rules and saying everybody must work this one way. I guess maybe some teachers are in a difficult position of trying to get everyone in the class to work the same way so that they can grade things fairly. I don't know. But I just really bristle at this whole idea of there being one way. Now, I suppose we've reached the point where I should probably knock it off with all the browns and start trying to add some additional colors. And at this stage, I think maybe it is a good idea to hit the pause button, and I'm going to let this brown dry, and then I'm going to come back and start trying to add additional non-brown types of color. All right, well, I'm back now that the paint is dried, and as promised, we're going to be adding a bit of red coloring to this vehicle. I'm just going to go bold. Go bold or go home. Here on the back tail of the vehicle, just to sort of break up this relentless brown that I had put in there. I do love seeing how the imperfections, that I would call them the sort of beautiful imperfections of watercolor, take form. You know, that sort of blotchiness normally would be to be avoided, but in this case, this sort of rusted old vehicle, it's perfect. It's just what I need. is that sort of blotchiness. Ah, the glories of blotchiness. So yeah, if you have watercolors at home and you have different types of coloring methods to choose from, think about the effects that you want. I mean, each one of these things lends itself to different looks, and I'm always sort of choosing, should I do this with watercolor? Should I do it with colored pencil? Should I do it with marker? Should I do it digitally? And I like when it's not something automatic. It's a choice that you've made based on the effect that you want the final illustration to have. Now notice what I'm doing here with this added watercolor is I'm kind of pulling it down so that the darkest area forms at the bottom. That's because this is sort of like a rounded plate, and my feeling is that if I get most of the darkness on one, if I can get a sort of gradual gradient change to the coloring, it can help that part look more rounded, rather than if it was just a single flat color. I'm going to make this part up here also that kind of reddish. Let's call it Luke Speeder Red. Luke Skywalker Speeder Red, that sort of brown, rusty red that his land speeder was colored. And actually, it wasn't in Force Awakens. I think the character Rey had her own sort of land speeder that had different shape, but seemed to have a lot of the same visual cues. And I'm going to go ahead and just, I'm kind of doing this as I go here. My whole idea with this video, with this series of videos, was to let it be spontaneous. Don't try to make this perfect illustration. As I said, trying to keep the amount of time short, although I'm sure I'm going past my 15-minute goal now. Sorry about that, guys. But we will at least have held to that promise of no time lapse. And unfortunately, watercolor is a tough one to do super fast. Well, at least the first video was close to 15 minutes. I think these subsequent videos are going to take a little more time. It's becoming obvious to me now. But, maybe beyond this red, I'm not going to do too much more. It'll be one of these dual color illustrations where there's just basically two main colors at play. Seems like her costuming ought to have some coloration to it. I'm going in here in the area of her pants, and maybe just make the whole upper suit, except for the vest, a similar color, so it all gets kind of tied together. I can see now, though, that the next week's inking final touches stage is going to be extra important in terms of finishing this illustration, because it is very loose and kind of amorphous even now, and greatly in need of some defining ink work. But I'm not going to resort to colored pencils, though it's a little tempting to it. I'm just going to keep this one. We're going to stick with the purity, the relative purity of pencil, watercolor, and ink. That is my goal. And just because of the time considerations, I know we've gone past 20 minutes now. I think I am going to just sort of wind it down for this week. And I do want to thank you guys all again for sticking with this video series. I hope it pleases those of you who don't like time-lapse, who want to see the entire process, well, you're seeing it. You're seeing it this time. This really is the entire process. And in the interest of keeping the video series relatively short, maybe, in the future people may want to watch all 3 of them back to back, I am going to try to wind this one down right now. I think I've got enough, basically, so that we can leave some of this to the final polishing stage, and that will involve bringing back a little bit of watercolor next week when we're ready to finally wrap this video up. But I guess I'm just going to go ahead and lay down the brush for now. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I really hope you liked it, and I'll be back with another one real soon.